In today's video, we're going to do a review of my 209 Pontiac Vibe. Without waiting, let's hop right into this, everyone. Alright everyone, in today's video we're going to be doing a review of the 209 Pontiac Vibe base model. Now we're going to pull up into a quieter section of this neighborhood so that it's a little bit easier to hear me. But before I start off, I'm just going to talk a little about the car, where I got my car and etc. and how much I actually paid for it. Now for me, I got the 209 Pontiac Vibe base model, and I bought it whenever it had 183,000 kilometers on the odometer, and I only paid $4 grand for it. Now to everyone who doesn't know Pontiac or Toyota, pretty much they did a collab with the Vibe and the Matrix, which means they have the same parts. The only difference between them is the body panel exterior. So let's say the engine, the transmissions, or anything mechanic or frame or like anything like major was made by Toyota. Now the only difference with the Pontiac Vibe model is, like I said, the body panels, and everything else is identical between the Matrix and the Vibe. Now what that means is simply the price for the Pontiac Vibe model was obviously way cheaper than the Toyota Matrix. It's a cousin, or whatever, what you guys would like to call it. Now to me, that was one of the main reason why I bought this car, because I wanted to stick with a Toyota, because before that I had a 206 Toyota Matrix, but it got busted by a deer. So I wanted to stay with the whole Toyota family, and I was in love with the whole hatchback concept and etc. Since for me, I do BMX, scootering, and you know, I like stuffing things in the car. One of my main necessity was to obviously have some space in the car. Now I remember someone mentioning me how the Vibe is pretty much the same thing as the Matrix, so I actually went onto Marketplace and, you know, did a little bit of research down there to see the prices, and then found this one for $4 grand, and I was like, I need this one. I bought it, and after taxes it was $4,600, which is honestly an amazing price for what the car is. Everything else is in shape in the car. Now I'm talking about mechanic and all of that. Everything's perfect. The only nitpicking part that I could really criticize about this car is the paint. Now it was a little bit of Pontiac's fault regarding about that, since they had a little bit of trouble with their paint. Now we're talking about the clear coat and etc. that it would kind of fade away a little bit, like the whole Honda Civic crisis, or whatever the hell you'd like to call the whole Honda Civic situation. But other than that though, the car drives amazing. Now of course it's only the base model, so it doesn't have the independent suspension in the back, but it has it for the front. Now it's pretty much the same thing like the older model, minus the engine. The engine, they pretty much took the same one but tweaked it there and there. Got a whole redesign exterior and interior. But if we're talking about mechanic, it's about featuring the same thing. Now what I mean by featuring about the same thing is we're talking about power, you know, horsepower, torque. It's almost the same, but obviously a little bit stronger. We're not talking about, you know, going from the base model to the sport model, but it definitely does it very significant on the highway. Now let's say if I had cruise control on, what it would do is, instead of downshifting to third gear to, you know, have more power to go up the hill, it'll be able to stay in fifth gear to be able to make it up the hill, which is something that, you know, I noticed instantly since I do quite a decent amount of highway driving. Now, as you can tell from the video, the whole interior is different compared to the older model. Now, I personally enjoy it. I don't know, it just feels more modern. You know, we're in 2021. I like to have, you know, more recent things. And my favorite part is obviously the aux cable, because who doesn't love listening to music? Alright, so that was pretty much the whole story of why I personally enjoy the car more compared to the older model of the Toyota Matrix. Now let's get into the geeky section of car shenanigans. So now this one is the 2ZR FE engine, but pretty much it's a 134 horsepower engine compared to the older model, which was a 128 horsepower if I'm correct. And for a torque aspect, I think 128. Now obviously it is no powerful engine, but it is a very, very reliable engine. It's small, it's not packed with a supercharger or a turbo on it, but on the bright side, it's very reliable. Turn the key, as always, Toyota starts right away. Now, of course, it's a little bit silly since, you know, it's a Pontiac, but all of the guts of it is pretty much a Toyota. But as I was mentioning, whenever you turn the key, car starts instantly, no issue there. I have never had any trouble with it so far. I've had it for about probably like a month, if not a month and 2 weeks. From now, I had zero problems with it. Let's switch to some cinematics and let's talk a little bit about the exterior and the interior of this car, everyone. All right, everyone, so we're gonna do this a little bit quickly since it's raining outside, but pretty much this is the engine bay. Of course, you have the engine in the middle, and since it is an inline and it has the transmissions right underneath, which means it's front wheel drive for this model since it's the base model. And then up front here we have the radiator with the radiator fan, of course, battery on the right side. This is the main fuse control box. I'm not gonna bother to open it, but it has all the information for the fuses on the car and etc. for each component. Over here is the air box where the oxygen comes in to feed the engine. And then afterwards, if you look deep down over here, that's the master cylinder for the brake fluid. If we come down over to the left side, we have the little coolant reservoir where you filled it up if you're only a little bit low on it, but if not, this is the main reservoir point where you're going to fill up your radiator. And then over here on the left side, you got all of your accessories driven by your serpentine belt. You have the alternator, and afterwards a little bit more down over there, you have the EC pump, and then same thing with the crankshaft to whenever start your car. And then over here onto the left side, you got your washer fluid where you filled it up. Now the difference with this model compared to the older model is it's an electronic steering wheel. It's not power steering fluid, so you don't have a cylinder for the power steering fluid. It's all electronically, which means you don't have to deal with that extra component. And I believe it's that part there, but I'm not too sure. I haven't fiddled with that. I have no experience with electronic steering wheel since my old one used to be power steering. And then afterwards, over here is obviously the manifold. And afterwards, if you look down into the back, if I can put my phone there. Down in the back is the exhaust where all the fumes escape. And as you can see, you have the shield on top of it. And afterwards, down at the bottom, you have the catalytic converter. Now, to all my curious one, I'm going to show the bottom of the car and talk a little bit about it. I don't know too much about it, but I'll show you a visual to the ones who are curious. So this is pretty much the underneath of the car. So as you look up front, you can see both catalytic converters. And afterwards, if you continue down, it brings you down to the resonator and the actual muffler, as they call it. But pretty much the pipe goes all the way down. And then over here, you got your gas tank where it stores all the gas whenever you drive. Now, the only poopy part on every car in Canada is obviously the rocker panels. Those runs onto the left and right side of the car. And then for the frame, it is about here. Now, to the people who are curious for where are the jack points for whenever you raise your car off the ground, whenever I do any service on this car, it would be right down over here. Now, for the front it would be right onto this section over there. That's the spot that I used to raise the car, and it's the same thing onto the other side. Now if we go over down to the rear of the car, I would usually use this point as a jack point since it's part of the frame and it's completely solid, so it's safe to do so. But of course I'm no professional mechanic, so if anything happens with your car, I'm not in charge of anything. Now one last part that I would like to show about the car, actually no, two last part is, as you can tell from the back, it's one full solid steel beam for the rear suspension afterwards. Now for the rear suspension, it's a little bit hard to see, but you have your rear struts right there. And if you were to change them, it's actually very easy. If you remove the rear cargo compartment, and you'll be able to access it from there. And if we look over to the front, they're just right there. Then you pop off the hood, and afterwards they're easy to swap out. And then if you look underneath, where's the oil drain plug? That's one last part that I'd like to show before I show more of the interior. And then right over here, that's your oil drain plug. And afterwards, if you were to look onto the side, you'll find your oil filter where you have to change it. Now, as I already mentioned, this is the base model engine, so it might be different for the other engine that's bigger, but that's where your oil drain plug would be. And afterwards, your oil filter is right next to it. You'll be able to see it if you go right underneath your car to go see it. But yeah, that was pretty much it for the exterior. Now, as I already mentioned, I have the base model, so you don't have the fancy fog lights and then the independent rear suspension, etc. But overall, though, this car is pretty fantastic exterior wise, and it handles very well on the highway with the whole aerodynamic and etc. Of course, it's no Formula 1 car, but you get what I'm trying to say. Now let's talk a little bit more about the inside, everyone. So if we sit inside, of course, you have the steering wheel in the middle with the Pontiac badge on it. Now, the whole interior is the same as the Toyota Matrix. Now, in the middle, of course, if you push, you have your honk. You have the classical Toyota cruise control stick. If you push on it, it turns it on. Afterwards, you set your speed by pushing down. And afterwards, if you want to stop it, you push it towards you. And afterwards, if you'd like to resume it, you simply flick back up. And then afterwards, onto the right side, you have your stick for your rear wiper and your front wiper with all the different settings to adjust it. And then if you come down onto the left side, you have your stick for your signal, so up to turn right, down to turn left, and afterwards to adjust your lights, low beams, and then afterwards still low beams, then flick front to activate your high beams and etc. If we look down over here, it's your mirror adjustments. All you do is you flick onto the right side if you like to adjust your right side mirror, and afterwards flicking onto the left if you like to adjust your left side mirror. And then it's super simple. It's like a little joystick to put it up, down, left, or right. And if you look down onto the left side, you have the traction control to turn it off and then turn it back on, which comes in handy during winter time as a Canadian up here. And afterwards you have child safety here. So over here you have the power lock, so it's super simple. You just press this, locks your door like that, and locks your door. Obviously, it's all electronic windows for this model. Now, I know for the Toyota Matrix, certain models you have manual windows where it's a crank and afterwards you turn it to put it up and down. But for this one, it's all electronic. So, and of course, in any emergency situation, you can manually do this yourself if you'd like. Now, if you look down into the main entertainment console, and then your right side to adjust and then go throughout the menus and etc. as a joystick. Here, seat tracks. Pretty basic stuff for an entertainment console. Down over here is for all of your EC, heater, and etc. So over here to change the settings and etc. Over here, it's to control the speed of the fans, how quick they're spinning. Here, super simple. Adjust left or right to adjust the temperature, and in the middle you have the AC button. And afterwards, with all Pontiac Vibe models, it comes with the electronic outlet. You turn that on, and afterwards it activates right down over here. Flick it down. It's a regular house outlet. Now, of course, if anything does happen, you'll blow your fuse, so it's not going to break anything onto your car, but it's not a switch like at your house whenever you turn it back and off, so back on and off. So be careful whenever you use that outlet, since if you bust the fuse, you'll have to replace it. Onto the left side is obviously the cigarette outlet. Now, if you look back over here, this is your shifter. Now, since this is the 1.8 liter engine model, it's the basic one, so it doesn't have the fancy feature over here to adjust throughout each gear if you get the higher model. And afterwards, onto the screen here, all it says is your passenger airbag, if it's on or off. And then as you saw, and then over here, handbox glove, two different compartments. There's an upper one, afterwards a lower one. And then over here, it's, control your thing, spin it around, left to right, etc. It goes in all the directions. Now, with the Pontiac model, it comes with the OnStar, I think they call it. So you have all the emergency safety features over here. And then here, you flick it towards you to change the aspect whenever there's someone there high beams in the back of you, and pretty simple. If you'd like to adjust it, it's manually adjusting it, and of course everyone gets some black eyes. Now if you look down over here, I'll turn on the car so you guys can see what shows throughout the screen. So obviously you have your speedometer in the middle. Onto the left side you have your tachometer saying your RPM. On the right side you got your oil engine temperature on the right side of the screen. And if you look at the left side of the right screen, you have obviously how much gas you have left in your tank. And then in the middle it says the temperature and which position you're in, so drive, park, and etc. So let's say if I were to put into reverse, as you can see the screen changes: neutral, drive, third gear, second gear, and first gear, aka the lower gear. And then afterwards at the bottom you can change your trip. Obviously you have your trip A, B, and afterwards your odometer. Now if we come down into the middle, obviously you got your e-brake. In the middle it's the cup storage holder. Obviously you got some face masks because we're in 2021, baby. And what's fun is here you can adjust it into different settings. As you can see, those slits, you have 3 different profiles that you can adjust it. So you can also put it, you know, more forward or more backward. You got the storage compartment on this side. First is for this, you know, store some things up there. Then if you flick the bottom handle, pop it up, you got your center where you can store more things. Let's close that back up. And if we go into the back, now that we're sitting in the back, you got this to store some things. I don't know, store some books or documents or so. Same thing onto the right side. Over here it's to put your drinks, so if you have children's, you know, they can put their drinks onto here. And if you look onto the left bottom side, more compartment over here to store some things. You got the window controller. Same goes for the right side. And now let's say for me, for whatever where I am sitting, I have about probably a nice hand distance from, you know, bottom to top, and I'm 5'8" if that gives you any idea. And then for leg room, I have plenty of space, and this seat is pushed pretty much all the way back, so you know my knees are not touching the seats or anything. Feels very spacious whenever you're sitting in the back, and the back is obviously more raised up. Now in the back you can sit 3-person. You got the seatbelt there, and then the last one over here. And then for the headrest, you can obviously manually adjust it by pressing the side button that's on the right side right over here, and then you adjust it up and down. And then obviously you got the trunk in the back. Now underneath this plastic, if you turn the 2 little things down over there, you probably, yeah, no, you can't see it on camera, but there's just 2 little things. You flick those to put it onto unlock mode. Afterwards you lift this plastic cover, and then you'll have your spare tire right underneath that. Something I do want to mention is right over here, this is super fantastic so that you don't have a huge bump in the middle for your exhaust that passes throughout here, usually underneath the car. So this is pretty fantastic, so whenever you're moving left or right side of the car, you don't have this in the way. And it also makes it for more storage space to put things in the back seats, everyone. Now we're almost done. Last thing I would like to talk about is you got this. If you flick it up, it raises your seat up, and if you push it down, it puts the seat more down. And then over here you got this to adjust, you know, your back to put it more forward or back. Then over here you got the classical metal bar to adjust to go more forward, or if not more backward. Then the last thing I'm going to mention about this car is you got a set of lights there, and you got one right there, and then you can adjust it for whenever you open the door they turn on, and if not, to always leave them on. Same goes for the back one, so it comes in handy whenever it's nighttime and you're removing things from your trunk. And afterward, pretty basic. Unfortunately there's no light, but then you can just use this one for light. Flick this from left to right, and oh look at this sexy guy right there. Now to my curious one who would like to hear the music, it's nothing too fancy, but have a listen. Now, of course, most of the car is made out of plastic trim, so if you were to play some bass music, let's just say it's not going to sound too fantastic. But as I've mentioned earlier, it's simple speakers. It does the job to listen to some music, but you're not going to get anything extraordinary out of this road, everyone. Now, before I forget this, I just want to talk about one last part of the exterior. Is both of them have disc brakes. So the front one are disc brake, as you can see right there. And if we go on to the back, they also have disc brake, which is pretty fantastic, everyone. Now, to conclude the video, in big words, this car is very reliable. It's small. It handles very well on tight corners and etc. Now, it might be small, but in exchange, since it's a hatchback, you can store many things in this car. You can put the back seats down, and it makes a perfect flatbed, you know, to move things around and etc. So if you go onto a trip, let's say, I don't know, that's like a 3-hour drive, it's gonna be amazing to store things. But in general, this car is no, you know, crazy to mess around car. But if you do get its cousin, the sport model, they call it the GT for the Pontiac Vibe, it packs a lot more power for the engine, and trust me, it handles very well since the rear suspension is an independent suspension, so it handles very amazing on tight turns. But this one, on the other hand, you know, it still does regular for turns and etc. Let's say if I were to do a sharp turn right now, you know, the car's not gonna roll over. But what's fun about it, since it's not an SUV, but it's also a hatchback, it still handles very well on turns. You don't get this whole effect of, like, you know, whatever they call it, of the cabin rolling onto its side left and right. You don't feel it as bad. Obviously you do a little bit since it's a hatchback. Definitely not comparable to an SUV. But overall though, if I were to recommend this car to anyone who's looking at a car with a lot of storage, that does very fantastic on fuel for what it is, I definitely obviously recommend this car to you. If not, get the Toyota Matrix on the other hand, but you'll obviously be paying a little bit more to have the Toyota badge on it. But all that I can say though, I love this car, and I am certain many more people would love this car. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell, everyone, and thank you so much for watching this video. And if you'd like to see the review of my 205 Toyota Matrix, it'll be in the description of this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching.